Hi, my name is Amelia Carter. I am 26 years old, an assistant director at a technology company in Boston, but even after carving out my own place in the world, one thing still clings to me like a scar that refuses to fade. For 26 years, my birthday has never once been remembered. Yet every year, I am the one standing behind the scenes, arranging the grand day for my younger sister. This story begins on an April evening, when the whole family gathered around the dinner table. The chandelier cast its warm glow, wine glasses shimmered, and the scent of steak still lingered in the air. On the table, my mother gently slid a cream-colored envelope with embossed golden patterns toward my sister, Chloe Carter, who had just turned 22 and was about to step into her 23rd year. I saw her eyes sparkle like a child unwrapping a Christmas gift. My mother's voice was soft. "This is your birthday gift, Chloe. We'll throw you a truly special party." My father, sitting beside her, eagerly added, "We've already booked the ballroom at the Four Seasons Hotel, big enough for 150 guests. You'll be the princess of that night." I watched the scene as if it were a movie I had seen far too many times, so familiar that it no longer surprised me, leaving only emptiness. Chloe wrapped her arms around my mother, beaming, while my father pulled out his phone to show the banquet hall layout, the VIP family table, the grand stage with the LED screen. The whole room came alive with excited chatter what color flowers would match Chloe's dress, whether the menu should feature seafood or steak, which live band in Boston was the most sought after. I sat there, set my cutlery down, finished my glass of water, and remained silent. No one asked me a single thing. It wasn't until the conversation moved into finer details that my mother suddenly turned to me, her tone more of a command than a suggestion. "Amelia, you'll plan everything for your sister, won't you? You've always been better at organizing. Just take this credit card and put down the deposit for the hotel. Your father and I will transfer you the rest later." I looked at the gleaming card placed in front of me, feeling the cold familiarity of it. Never once had they hesitated to place everything about Chloe onto my shoulders. I forced a faint smile, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yes, I'll take care of it." Inside, a bitter ache rose up. My whole life, whenever my sister needed something, those words always appeared, whether it was small things like preparing her dress or picking up her friends, or big occasions like arranging birthday parties or graduation celebrations. I had always been the quiet shadow, making sure her spotlight never dimmed. My mother raised her glass to toast Chloe, my father was already on the phone with a friend to confirm more details, and Chloe was busy posting a story on Instagram, showing off the embossed envelope. I just sat there, like an unnamed guest in my own family. In my mind, memories carved deep long ago began to resurface. Before this story continues, I want to ask you something. Have you ever sat in the shadows, waiting for a birthday wish that never came? If your answer is yes, leave a comment telling me where you are listening to this story from, so I know I am not alone. I still remember vividly the day I turned 10. Every child looks forward to their birthday, hoping for a cake, a few glowing candles, friends laughing around them, or, at the very least, a hug from their parents. I was no different. That entire week, I had counted down the days, even hand-drawing little invitations with colored pens, writing down the names of a few classmates I planned to invite over. But that morning, my mother walked into my room, neatly dressed, reminding Chloe nonstop to bring her dance shoes, her hair clips. I asked softly, "Mom, today, is anyone coming over?" She paused for a moment, then gave a weak smile. "Oh, Amelia, today is your sister's big dance recital. We have to get there early to prepare. We'll do your birthday another day." But that another day never came. I sat in the backseat of the car, clutching the small gift I had saved my lunch money to buy for myself, a 12-piece colored pencil set, while the whole family laughed and chatted about Chloe's performance. That afternoon, I sat quietly in the audience, clapping along with everyone else, though inside me I felt the first crack form. That night, while the family celebrated Chloe's praise, I sat alone with a stale cookie from the kitchen and a tiny candle stuck on top, lit it, and blew it out in silence. 6 years later, when I turned 16, I made myself a promise. This year, I will have a real birthday party. I saved every dollar from my part-time job at the school library, enough to order a small cake and a few bunches of balloons. I excitedly planned to invite my close friends over, picturing us laughing together in the living room. But 3 days before my birthday, my mother came in, her voice cheerful. "Amelia, I'm sorry, but you know how it is. Your sister is about to have her sweet 13. We're going to turn the living room into a dance floor, hire a DJ, set up lights. So could you postpone your little plan?" My throat went dry. The happy birthday poster I had just taped to the wall suddenly looked so out of place. On the afternoon of my birthday, I packed up my decorations and gave the entire space to Chloe. The whole house filled with flashing lasers, blaring music, and Chloe's friends dancing and shouting. I hid in my room, listening to the speakers rattling the walls, clutching my untouched birthday cake, and ended up eating it alone. When the guests finally left, I went down to the kitchen, the room strewn with soda cans and ripped wrapping paper. I quietly placed my cake on the table, lit a candle, and blew it out, no longer expecting anyone to remember or say a word. Then came the year I turned 21, the age every American kid looks forward to. Finally old enough to walk into a bar legally, to raise a glass with friends under the pulsing music, to feel like I had truly crossed into adulthood. My friends and I planned a night out, and deep down I hoped my parents would at least send me a birthday wish. But that day, the phone rang. It was my mother. "Amelia, your sister's DJ just canceled last minute. Do you know anyone? Can you make the calls? Don't let her party fall apart." I froze, staring at the dress I had picked out for the night, my hand trembling around the phone. Instead of holding my very first drink, I spent the entire evening dialing number after number, trying desperately to find a replacement DJ for Chloe's party. By the time I finally secured one, it was almost midnight. My friends had all gone home, and I was left with nothing but a slice of cold pizza from a shop on my way back. I chewed it slowly, eyes stinging, realizing that once again, my special day had turned into nothing more than another duty for my sister. The years that followed played out like a circle with no end. My birthday never existed as a real event. It was always just pizza after Chloe's party. If Chloe had a grand celebration at a hotel, what I got was leftover cake or a half-hearted greeting. When I moved away for school, I thought maybe, at the very least, my parents would send me a message on the right day, but they didn't. During my first year of college, I received a text on the 15th of September. "Good luck, love." The problem was, my birthday is on the 12th of September. I read that message over and over, torn between laughter and pain. They hadn't just forgotten the party, they couldn't even remember the exact day I was born. That feeling of invisibility sank into me, as if my existence only had value when it served someone else's spotlight. I used to try not to blame them, comforting myself with thoughts like, maybe my parents are too busy, maybe Chloe needs them more. But after too many times, the truth became impossible to deny. In their eyes, I was nothing but a shadow, the person who stood behind the curtains. That scar grew larger with each passing year, etched deep into my heart. And sitting at that dinner in Boston, watching the embossed envelope handed directly to Chloe, listening to my parents brag about the Four Seasons ballroom, I finally understood one thing. It wasn't that I never had birthdays. It was that my birthdays had never existed within my own family. That dinner didn't end with the embossed envelope. Just as dessert was being served, Chloe pulled a sheet of paper from her purse, her handwriting neat, the ink from her pen still faintly pressed into the page. She cleared her throat like a queen issuing a decree. "I want French champagne, the newest Dom Perignon. I also want white orchids, not regular roses. And there has to be a live band, not some cheap DJ. Oh, and the backdrop must be custom-made, with CHLOE spelled out in full, shining." Each word Chloe spoke felt like a tiny blade, and I knew exactly who would be the one running across the city to make them real. My parents laughed loudly, nodding along as if they were listening to a stroke of genius. My father patted my sister on the shoulder. "Of course, sweetheart. Amelia will handle everything. She's responsible." She's used to this by now. My mother turned to me, her eyes a mixture of trust and command. Don't forget, Amelia, you always know how to manage things. I trust you. I forced a smile, nodded just to get it over with, but inside my chest a tightness rose. I had grown so used to this script that I could predict every line before it was spoken, yet this time, I could feel something inside me beginning to crack. That night, I went back to my small apartment in South End. The city of Boston still glimmered with late-night lights, but my room was dim, lit only by the glow of my laptop screen. I set my bag down, slipped off my shoes, and immediately opened the familiar folder. Chloe's birthday. The folder was so thick it held hundreds of files from cake invoices in 2010, guest lists from 2015, to photographer contracts from 2019. I clicked through each one, the sound of my mouse sharp and hollow, as if I were reopening old scars. Beside me, my banking app displayed a stark number. $2,800. That was the entire advance my mother had given me to arrange the party. Just glancing at Chloe's request list, I knew that money was nothing. A single bottle of Dom Perignon cost more than $1,000. Imported white orchids, a few hundred more. A live band in Boston, at least several thousand. Altogether, it was far beyond my means. And still, my parents handed me that card and said, "Just cover it for now." My phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a message from Rachel Kim, my colleague and closest friend, the only person I had ever confided in about my family. The message was brief. "They're making you handle everything again, aren't they?" I sat silently for a few seconds, then typed back. "Yeah, the entire Four Seasons ballroom, 150 guests, French champagne, white orchids, live band. I don't even know where to start." Her reply came almost instantly, as if she had been waiting. "Amelia, when are you going to stop? You're not their free event planner. What about your own birthday? Have they ever remembered it?" I bit my lip, unable to answer right away. Rachel went on. "You've been working yourself to the bone all year, saving every penny. Why don't you try using that money for yourself? A trip, a day that truly belongs to you. You deserve so much more than this." I read those words again and again, my vision blurring. From the time I was a child, no one had ever told me that I deserved anything. I only knew how to repeat the same role, silently enduring. But that night, a different seed quietly began to take root inside me. I opened a new tab on my browser. My hands trembled as I typed, "Florida Keys Beach House Rental." A cascade of images appeared, long stretches of white sand, wooden bungalows facing the sea, balconies draped with white curtains swaying in the breeze. My eyes fixed on one bungalow in Key West. The rental price was steep, but to me, it shone like a dream. I imagined waking up to the sound of waves, not my mother's phone calls barking reminders. I imagined raising a cocktail glass with friends in the evening, not running around arranging seats for Chloe's guests. I imagined myself, Amelia, sitting on the sand with the sea wind in my hair, and for the first time in my life, that image made me truly smile. I clicked the reserve button. My heart pounded as if I had just crossed a line I had never dared to before. In that moment, I knew I would no longer stand in the shadows. The day Chloe was celebrated in the Four Seasons ballroom would be the day I disappeared from Boston. And while 100 guests sat in an empty hall, I would be in the Florida Keys, living the happiest day that finally belonged to me. From the moment I pressed reserve on the Key West bungalow rental page, it was as if a new flame ignited inside me. But I also knew that to break free from the familiar cycle my family always forced onto my shoulders, I would need to prepare carefully. For the first time in my life, I decided I would not follow their wishes. Instead, I would construct a facade convincing enough to make them believe I was still handling everything for Chloe. I started by reopening old contract templates from the Chloe's birthday folder. After years of being an accidental event assistant, I knew exactly what my parents needed to see. A PDF with a restaurant logo, a preliminary confirmation email, a few details about deposits and menus. Quietly, I edited the old contracts, changed dates, copied and pasted service lists, and created a new file titled 4 Seasons Confirmation. When I looked at it again, it was flawless, so convincing that even I could believe it was real. I sent the PDF by email to my parents, adding the usual line. "Everything is arranged. I'll stay on top of it to make sure the event goes exactly as expected." Within minutes, my mother replied with a heart emoji and the words, "You're always so thoughtful." When I read it, I smiled, and for the first time, that smile carried no bitterness. At the same time, I returned to the travel tab. The Key West bungalow was secured, and I began the payment. It was a light blue wooden house with a red tile roof, a balcony facing the ocean, and in the promotional photo, a white hammock swaying under palm trees. Looking at it, I felt as if I had opened a door into another life, a life where I was the main character, not the one standing backstage. I checked my bank account, the balance already thinner after the deposit, but this time, I wasn't afraid. I only felt free. Rachel was the first person I told about my plan. I texted her. I booked a bungalow in Key West on Chloe's birthday. Less than a minute later, she called, her voice a mix of shock and joy. "You really did it? Oh my God, Amelia, you finally thought of yourself." She nearly shouted through the phone, and it made me laugh for the first time in weeks. Then she added, "I'm coming with you. I'll even bring a few friends so you won't feel alone." The next day, during lunch at the office, Rachel brought along Michael, the careful, quiet, but kind accountant. When he heard my story, Michael simply nodded, then smiled. "I've got nearly 200,000 miles I haven't used. Let me book tickets for the whole group. Consider it my gift to you for your special day." I froze, stunned. No one had ever given me something so generous before. Hannah, my friend from college, messaged me as soon as she heard. "Count me in. You deserve a real family. This trip will be your birthday, Amelia." I sat in my small apartment, staring at my phone screen lit up with messages from Rachel, Michael, and Hannah, and suddenly my eyes blurred with tears. My whole life, I had waited for a birthday wish, a hug, a little bit of care from my parents. But what I always got instead was never-ending responsibility. And yet, in just a few days, people with no blood ties had given me something my family never had: genuine presence. I realized then that there were people who truly thought of me not out of duty, not out of obligation, but because they genuinely wanted me to be happy. And to me, that was worth more than any ballroom at the Four Seasons. As night fell, I turned off the lights and sat in front of my laptop, my hand resting on a small notebook. I wrote down every task I needed to complete, draft a few more reminder emails from the fake vendors to keep my family convinced until the very last moment, pack light for the trip, change my voicemail so I wouldn't be disturbed, and most importantly, give myself permission to enjoy it all. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was in control of my own story. And in that moment, I knew. Chloe's upcoming birthday would not only be her day, but also the day I began a new life. From the moment my secret plan in Key West was set, I started taking my first steps of rebellion. They weren't loud or explosive actions, but small, quiet, powerful gestures that made me feel as though the chains around me were beginning to loosen. The first was with my phone. For years, I had lived in a constant state of readiness: one call from my mother, a text from my father, or a demand from Chloe, and I would respond instantly. I used to pride myself on being reliable, but now I realized that reliability had simply turned me into their service bell. So I changed course. On Monday morning, when the phone buzzed and Mom flashed across the screen, I let it ring until it went to voicemail. My mother's urgent voice filled the inbox. "Amelia, did you order the champagne yet? Don't forget, Chloe wants Dom Perignon specifically. Call me back right away." I listened, smiled faintly, then set the phone back down and continued sipping my coffee. The feeling was strange, a mix of guilt and a sweet, intoxicating sense of freedom. The next day, I pushed my rebellion one step further. My mother unexpectedly showed up at my office, clutching a stack of flyers for party decoration services. The receptionist called to let me know. I glanced at my calendar, saw a wide-open slot, but instead of going out, I turned to Rachel and asked her to pass along a message. Amelia is tied up in a long meeting and won't be able to see anyone. I could picture my mother frowning at the reception desk, so used to me rushing out to meet her, and this time receiving nothing but a curt refusal. That afternoon, she sent me an email. "Are you really too busy to spare 5 minutes for me?" I read it, but chose not to reply. It was silence with intent. Chloe, of course, never stopped giving orders. One late night, as I was working on a report for the company, a message from her appeared on my screen. "Changed my mind. Switch the flowers from white orchids to pink peonies. Redo it immediately." I stared at the glowing words, and I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel hopeless, only a deep weariness spreading through me. I typed exactly 3 words. Noted. Then I set the phone down without another word. Chloe never replied. I knew she would assume I had done as she asked, but this time, I hadn't lifted a finger. I let everything fall into the empty space I had prepared, avoid waiting for the collapse of her party. Every small action, no matter how simple, made me feel my spine straighten a little more. No longer hunched in expectation of orders, I began to lift my head and meet my own eyes in the mirror, seeing them clearer, my shoulders no longer weighed down. One morning, as I got ready for work, I noticed that my smile wasn't forced like it always had been. I was smiling, genuinely smiling for myself because I had finally dared to walk a different path. That shift bled into my work as well. In the past, I blurred the lines between office emails and family emails, juggling million-dollar projects while simultaneously managing Chloe's guest lists. But now, whenever I saw Mom or Chloe in my inbox, I dragged their messages into a separate folder and closed it. I poured my focus entirely into the new project, and something remarkable happened. My boss, Mark, began to notice. He praised me for being more focused, more efficient. And I could see it clearly only when I loosened the invisible chains of my family did I finally create space to grow. One Friday evening, Rachel pulled me out to a small bar near the office. As I recounted the past few days, she raised her glass of beer and laughed. "See, you're finally learning to say no. It sounds small, but it's the strongest way to reclaim yourself." I nodded, feeling my heart lighter. Under the warm, dim amber lights, I knew I was stepping closer to a new Amelia, not the shadow behind her sister, but a woman with her own voice. The night before Chloe's birthday party, I sat alone in my small apartment, the yellow light casting shadows across the wooden floor as I quietly pulled my suitcase into the middle of the room. The silence was so deep I could hear the zipper sliding, the soft rustle of clothes being folded. I didn't want to bring much, just a few comfortable dresses, swimwear, a book I had never found time to read, and my small camera. When I placed the last pair of sandals into the suitcase, I couldn't help but think of my mother, father, and Chloe, all thrilled, imagining me still buried in preparations for the party. Meanwhile, I was here, ready to leave Boston without anyone knowing. Before going to bed, I glanced at my phone. 27 missed calls from the past few days. I ignored them, switched the ringer off, and felt lighter than I ever had. At 4 a.m, the short honk of a car echoed outside my door. I carried my suitcase down and found Rachel in the driver's seat, her hair tied high, her face glowing even before dawn. "Ready?" she asked, her eyes sparkling like this was an adventure for both of us. I nodded and climbed in. In the back, Michael was already seated with his laptop on his knees, while Hannah carried a bag of breakfast. Together we sped toward Logan Airport, the city still veiled in mist, the yellow streetlights streaking past the windows. Sitting in that car, for the first time, the Boston sky didn't feel heavy as it always had. It felt like a curtain lifting, opening the way for me to step into a new beginning. At the check-in counter, the staff smiled warmly. "Good morning, Miss Carter. Your journey today has been upgraded to first class, thanks to Mr. Michaels Miles." I turned to him and he just shrugged with a small smile. "A belated birthday gift, remember?" I laughed, tears welling in my eyes not because of the luxury seat, but because for the first time in my life, someone had given me something simply to make me happy. The flight was long, but I never felt tired. When the plane touched down in Key West and the doors opened, brilliant sunlight flooded in, a world away from Boston's gray chill. Rachel and Hannah stepped out first, then suddenly raised a banner they had drawn with colored markers. "Happy birthday, Amelia." The letters were uneven, the colors mismatched, but to me it was more beautiful than any sparkling backdrop I had ever been forced to order for Chloe. I burst out laughing, then pulled them both into a hug, feeling as if I had just been born again. This wasn't my birthday on paper, but it was without a doubt the happiest day of my life. The rental car carried us along the coastal road. Ahead of us, the sun poured over turquoise waves, palm trees swaying in the breeze. When we arrived, I saw the bungalow that was mine, a pale blue wooden house with a red-tiled roof, its wide balcony opening straight toward the ocean. The rhythmic crash of waves, the salty tang of the sea, and the wind running through my hair, everything wrapped around me. I set my suitcase down, walked out onto the balcony, and stood there for a long time, letting the sun and wind sink into my skin. It was a feeling I had never known in 26 years. I finally belonged to myself. That evening, we spread a blanket across the sand and opened a cheap bottle of wine Rachel had picked up from a nearby shop. Hannah strummed a few chords on her guitar, Michael sat quietly listening, and I lay back on a lounge chair, my eyes lifted to a sky glittering with stars. Laughter echoed, mingling with the sound of the waves. In that moment, I realized I didn't need a grand ballroom. I didn't need 150 guests dressed in finery. All I needed were people who truly wanted me to be happy, and a place where I could finally breathe free. Before going to bed, I opened my phone and went into the voicemail settings. I recorded a new greeting, my voice calm, even carrying the faint trace of a smile. "I'm busy enjoying my life right now. Please leave a message." When I pressed save, I knew with certainty that from now on, whoever called, whether it was my mother, my father, or Chloe, would only hear that truth. And for the first time in my life, that truth belonged to me. I stretched out on the wooden chair on the bungalow's porch, the sea breeze running through my hair, my hand slowly swirling a bright orange cocktail in the fading light. The sound of waves mingled with Rachel and Hannah's laughter as they jostled to take photos on the sand below. From the balcony, I looked out at the endless stretch of blue ocean, my chest light as though I had finally cast off a boulder that had weighed me down for years. Meanwhile, in the grand ballroom of the Four Seasons Hotel, the clock struck exactly 6:30 p.m. The first guests began to step through the towering doors, the chandelier light glittering across the polished marble floor. They were dressed to perfection, gowns and pressed suits, ready for the lavish annual Carter celebration they had come to expect. But as they walked inside, they froze. The room was empty. No banquet tables set, no stage, no band tuning instruments. Only a cold ballroom with stacked chairs in the corner, the wooden floor reflecting the silhouettes of confused strangers. Chloe appeared moments later, in her golden evening gown studded with crystals, hair pinned high, lips painted in bold red. She had spent hours preparing, imagining the moment she would enter to applause and flashing cameras. Instead, what lay before her was a slap in the face. She stood paralyzed in the center of the hall, her expression collapsing from expectation to shock, her complexion draining as though the blood had vanished from her body. Around her, guests began to murmur, whispers spreading across the room. Someone asked hesitantly, "Wait, wasn't there supposed to be a party here?" Another sighed, "Maybe they're not ready yet." How strange. But as the minutes passed, nothing changed. New staff, new tables, new flowers, new champagne. My mother rushed forward then, the hem of her long gown sweeping across the floor, her face shining with sweat. She fumbled for her phone, dialing my number. The ringtone echoed, again and again. But each attempt ended the same way, with my voicemail. "I'm busy enjoying my life right now. Please leave a message." My voice reverberated into the air like a cold declaration. She called again a second time, a third, a 10th. By the end of the evening, there were 36 missed calls stacked one after another, but I remained sprawled on the beach, cocktail in hand, my phone face down on the wooden table, letting it all pass without a thought. Chloe began to cry. Black mascara streaked down her cheeks, dripping over her carefully powdered face. My father, his face red with anger and shame, tried to calm the guests. Just a small technical issue, please be patient. But his words were meaningless. Guests were already leaving, groups of 5 or 10 quietly filing out of the ballroom, their expressions carrying a mix of pity and ridicule. Some even snapped photos of the empty hall and immediately posted them on Instagram with mocking captions. Most exclusive party, ever nothing but empty chairs. Hashtags like #birthday disaster and #4 seasons fail began spreading, pulling in hundreds of laughing comments. In the chaos of that ballroom, Chloe collapsed onto a chair, her glittering gown catching the light, only emphasizing the tragedy of the scene. She buried her face in her hands, her muffled sobs echoing in the emptiness. My mother sat beside her, holding her shoulders, her eyes darting constantly back to her phone as she dialed me in desperation once more. My father turned his frustration toward the hotel staff, berating them, but quickly received a sharp reply. "Sir, we never received any official booking contract for tonight." News spread faster than any wildfire. Within an hour, the story of Chloe Carter's birthday party disaster had taken over Instagram and Twitter. Images of Chloe crying, my parents panicking, and the empty ballroom turned into memes. Chloe's friends posted stories, half mocking, half pitying. Came to the Four Seasons for $1 million party, ended up with instant noodles at home. Panic swallowed my parents, people who had always been used to admiration in the community. All their confidence, all their pride collapsed in just a few hours. As for me, on the other side of the country, I lay back on a lounge chair, listening to waves crash and my friends' laughter carry in the night. I didn't check my phone, didn't open social media, didn't let a single desperate ring from my mother pierce through my freedom. A cold, sweet cocktail on my lips, the Florida sky glittering with stars, and my heart at peace for the very first time. I knew that back in Boston my family was drowning in chaos, but it no longer had anything to do with me. That party had never been mine, and it was never worth sacrificing my life for. That night, when I returned to the bungalow, I opened the balcony doors wide and let the sea breeze flood in. I turned on my phone for a brief moment, watching the flood of notifications fill the screen. 36 missed calls, 52 messages, countless Instagram alerts. I simply smiled, set the phone down, turned away, and let the moonlight fall across me. Behind me, an entire world of chaos was crumbling. In front of me, the vast ocean kept rolling its waves, whispering, "At last, Amelia, you chose yourself." I was still in Key West when the whispers spread further, this time beyond Instagram. A few friends sent me screenshots from Facebook. My mother had posted a long status, publicly blaming me. She wrote, "We trusted Amelia, gave her the responsibility of organizing her sister's birthday. But she ruined everything. A selfish act that humiliated the family in front of friends and community. I cannot believe my eldest daughter could be so cruel." Below her post, my father had commented, piling on, "She not only abandoned us but deliberately took the money to spend for herself." I read their words, not surprised but still tight in the chest. They hadn't stopped for even a moment to look in the mirror. Instead, as always, they had thrown all the blame onto me, the role they had assigned me for my entire life. Chloe didn't stop at social media. 3 days after I returned to Boston, my company inbox exploded with a strange email sent directly to the executive board, human resources, and even the chief financial officer. The sender, Chloe Carter. The subject line, "Urgent, report on employee fraudulent behavior." The message stretched nearly 2 pages, accusing me of using the family credit card to withdraw money, then disappearing on the day of the birthday, and of fraudulent conduct, embezzlement, and damaging the family's reputation with business partners. Chloe knew exactly how important my position was at the company, and she wanted to destroy it. I read the email in my office, my hands clenched tight, but inside I felt an unexpected calm, because I knew with absolute certainty I had done nothing wrong. 2 days later, my parents showed up at my office. No appointment, no regard for the fact that I was in the middle of work. They simply barged in, demanding to see the leadership. At the reception desk, my mother shouted that the company was harboring a fraud, while my father loudly demanded accountability. Rumors spread quickly, and colleagues glanced at me with every kind of expression. I saw Rachel in the corner, fists clenched, wanting to run to me but held back by security. I stepped forward, faced them directly, and spoke in an even voice. I need you both to leave this workplace. The company will handle this matter professionally. There's no need for this chaos here. My mother glared at me, but in the end, she let security escort them out. That very afternoon, the leadership called an emergency meeting. I walked into the boardroom, facing HR, the CFO, and my direct supervisor Mark, the man who had watched my work closely for the past 3 years. The air was thick with tension, every eye fixed on me, waiting for an explanation. I sat up straight, opened the leather case I had brought with me. First of all, I began, my voice steady, I want to show you all the evidence. I opened my laptop and projected the emails from my mother and father, each one ordering me to take charge of Chloe's birthday. As with every year, they handed me this responsibility. It wasn't voluntary. It was forced. Then I pulled up the series of fake PDF contracts I had sent them. These contracts contain no signatures, no official stamps from any vendor. I sent them only to stop the constant nagging. But they never noticed, never questioned, and simply dumped the responsibility onto me. Next, I laid a set of bank statements on the table. This is the money they transferred to me, $2,800. Everyone here knows booking the Four Seasons ballroom costs more than 10 times that amount. I didn't misuse a single dollar, and here, I held up a receipt, is proof that I returned every cent to them this very morning. I have not taken anything that belongs to them. No. The room fell silent. I could feel the shift in everyone's eyes from suspicion to understanding. I drew a deep breath and continued. For 26 years, I've stood in the shadows, carrying the weight so my sister could shine. This time, I chose not to. That isn't fraud. That is me refusing to be a servant. Mark nodded, his expression stern but with something warm behind it. He rose to his feet, looked around the room, and said, "No one has the right to turn my employee into a slave for her family. I've seen Amelia's work here. She is professional, dedicated, and always transparent. What happens outside is a family issue, not a company issue. And I will not allow anyone to exploit the reputation of this firm to tear down a valuable employee." I absorbed every word, as if an invisible shield had wrapped itself around me. From the back row, Rachel smiled softly, her eyes glistening as if she wanted to cry for me. The meeting ended with not a single doubt left lingering. In fact, a few colleagues even came over quietly, patting my shoulder, whispering, "We believe you." Meanwhile, my parents and Chloe had completely failed. They couldn't prove a single accusation. Their Facebook posts quickly turned into a joke, as friends and neighbors began questioning them instead. If you truly loved your daughter, why did you leave everything on her shoulders? Chloe was mocked relentlessly across Instagram, her glittering gown in that empty ballroom becoming the very symbol of arrogance collapsing. I, on the other hand, suddenly found myself surrounded by more empathy from colleagues than I had ever known. In the small office kitchen, as I poured coffee, a few people struck up conversations, asking how I was doing, then sharing their own stories of unfair families. I realized I wasn't alone. And more importantly, for the first time, I had stood up without hiding and I had won. Not with bitter revenge, but with truth and dignity. That evening, when I returned to my apartment, I sat down in my chair and looked out at the glowing windows across the city. My phone buzzed and buzzed, my screen lighting up with Mom and Dad. I let it ring, listening to the voicemail greeting I had recorded. "I'm busy enjoying my life right now. Please leave a message." And this time, I knew with certainty they had begun to understand my life no longer belonged to them. The next day, after work, the Boston sky was already dark, the wind rustling through the trees that lined the street. All I wanted was to get home, make a cup of hot tea, stretch out on the sofa, and enjoy a few minutes of peace. But when I slid the key into the lock, something felt wrong. The door wasn't locked at all. My heart thudded, and when I pushed the door open, the sight before me made me freeze. On the sofa sat my parents, shoulders stiff, faces tight with tension. Chloe perched beside them, one leg crossed over the other, clutching her designer bag with icy eyes. They didn't wait for me to speak. The storm broke the moment I stepped inside. My mother screamed. "Amelia, you humiliated us in front of the whole city. Do you have any idea what the guests are saying? You ruined your sister's birthday and then dared to slander us at your company." My father slammed his hand down on the table, his voice shaking with rage. "We raised you, fed you, sent you to school, and this is how you repay us? You will apologize to your sister immediately. You will admit your fault publicly and restore this family's honor." Chloe's voice cracked with tears, sharp and shrill. "You're selfish. You wanted to steal my spotlight. I only get one chance in my life to shine, and you deliberately ruined it. Everyone's mocking me, calling me a joke online. Are you happy now?" I looked at the three of them. For 26 years, this scene had been so familiar I could recite it in my sleep. They threw all the blame onto me, and I bowed my head in silence. But not this time. This time, I no longer stood hunched and small. I set my bag down, took a deep breath, and lifted my chin to face them directly. My voice was steady, not loud, not trembling, but it cut through the room like a blade. "I've been waiting for this moment." I stepped further into the room and pulled out an old leather notebook, its edges worn, and dropped it firmly onto the table. "This is my record. 26 years. One page for each year. 10 years old forgotten because of Chloe's dance recital. 16 years old, my party canceled so the living room could host her sweet 16. 21, while I should have been at the bar for the first time, I sat making calls to replace her DJ. Do you want me to keep going?" I flipped through the pages, every line scrawled in my handwriting, every forgotten birthday etched down. Cold pizza instead of cake. Good luck text, but sent on the wrong day. The apartment was swallowed in silence, broken only by the dry sound of paper turning. Then I opened another folder and set it on the table, receipts I had paid on Chloe's behalf. "Here is the bill for her prom dress when she was 17. I put it on my card because Mom said there wasn't time. Here is the photographer's invoice for her 18th birthday. I advanced the money. Here's the deposit for the DJ when I was 21, and there are more." I pushed the stack of papers toward them, my gaze never wavering. How many times did I have to give up my money, my time, my youth to patch up things for her? And now you stand here demanding that I apologize? My mother's mouth fell open, but no words came out. My father's fists clenched, as if ready to argue, but he found nothing to say. Chloe's face flushed bright red. She shot to her feet, her voice cracking into a scream. "All you do is keep score. You're sick for keeping that notebook. You always play the victim. You don't deserve to be my sister." Then she tossed her hair, her heels striking hard against the floor as she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I turned back to my parents, still sitting there, stunned and awkward. Slowly, I spoke, each word deliberate. "From this moment, there are only two paths. 1, you respect me as part of this family, as a person with worth, not a servant. Or 2, we are no longer family." My voice wasn't loud, but in the silence it rang like a bell. My mother's voice trembled. "Amelia, don't say that. I still love you, it's just..." I cut her off. "Love? You call it love when you forgot my birthday 26 times? Love when you turned me into my sister's servant? Love when you tried to destroy my reputation online and at work?" My father looked away, unable to meet my eyes, as if for the first time he was seeing the raw truth laid bare. I stepped forward and held out my hand. "Give me the keys to this apartment. You no longer have the right to come in here." My mother hesitated, then with trembling fingers pulled the key from her purse and placed it in my palm. I closed my hand around the cold metal, feeling a control I had never known before. I opened the door and pointed outward. "Leave." They walked out, silent, like defeated figures. I watched them go not with triumph, but with an indescribable sense of relief. When the door shut behind them and the lock clicked into place, I collapsed onto the sofa, still clutching the keys tightly. The room was silent, but inside me a long, heavy breath escaped. After 26 years, the chains had finally fallen. I didn't know what the future would hold, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty: I had just taken myself back. A year later, Boston remained as bustling as ever, but for me, everything had changed. I stood in my new apartment, a bright space with cream-colored walls, a small balcony overlooking the Charles River. It wasn't large, but every corner bore my mark. Bookshelves crammed with novels I hadn't yet read, a yoga mat neatly spread under the morning light, framed photos of me and my friends from the Florida Keys trip hanging straight on the wall. This apartment was not just a place to live. It was a symbol of the freedom I had fought to reclaim. Tonight, I was hosting my 27th birthday. Not in a grand ballroom, not with 150 guests in gowns and tuxedos, but with a small circle of people who truly mattered. Rachel arrived with a bouquet of purple lavender, placing it in the center of the table, her smile radiant. Michael brought a bottle of red wine, joking as he set it down. Not Dom Perignon, but at least no one's making you foot the bill. Hannah hugged me tightly and handed me a small box. Just an empty wooden frame, she said softly. I want you to choose your own moment to hang inside it. My Aunt Susan, my mother's sister, also came. She had always quietly supported me, and tonight she entered carrying a small, delicate cake with a crooked number 27 candle perched on top. This year, you make a wish for yourself, not for anyone else, she whispered, her eyes shining. I had changed so much after that storm. The company recognized my effort and determination on a major project, and Mark promoted me to deputy project manager. I started taking yoga classes every morning, learning to listen to my body. I even began dating a man from the same class, gentle and respectful, who never once treated me like a shadow. Each small step, each new choice, felt like I was piecing myself back together, reborn from fragments. What surprised me was that after a year of silence and turmoil, my parents began sending small greeting cards. Nothing elaborate, just a few lines. Wishing you good health. Happy New Year. Once, I would have read those words over and over, searching desperately for love inside them. But now, I simply smiled, set them on the shelf, and felt no expectation at all. I had stopped waiting for them to become people they never were. Chloe, after months of silence, one day sent me a short message. Want to grab coffee? I read it, surprised, but without the old tremor in my chest. I understood that text wasn't an apology, nor was it regret. It was merely a faint beginning, a conditional gesture of reconciliation, a quiet acknowledgement that I was no longer invisible, no longer someone she could trample on. I didn't reply right away, but for the first time, I realized I had a choice. I could meet her, or not, entirely depending on what I wanted, not out of obligation. On the night of my birthday, I stood before the small cake Aunt Susan had brought. The candle flickered, casting its light across my face as my friends cheered around the table. I closed my eyes, made a wish for myself alone, then blew out the flame. Applause erupted, laughter filled the room, and suddenly my throat tightened. For so many years, I had dreamed of a moment this simple, a small cake, people who truly wanted me to be happy, and a smile that wasn't forced. And now, I finally had it. I looked around the room and saw Rachel raising her glass, Michael uncorking the bottle of wine, Hannah fussing with the new frame she had just set on the shelf, and Aunt Susan smiling gently. In that moment, I realized family isn't about blood, it's about the people who choose to stay by your side. For 26 years, I had been invisible in my own family. But with just one act of standing up for myself, I discovered my true worth. I turned to the faces in front of me, and as if speaking to both them and myself, I said, I once believed that to be acknowledged, I had to endure, I had to sacrifice. But that isn't the truth. My worth doesn't come from praise or recognition. My worth lies in my ability to stand tall, to say no, and to choose a life of my own. And now, I want to ask you, the one listening to this story. Have you ever been forgotten by your own family? Have you ever sat in the dark, waiting for a wish that never came? If your answer is yes, please remember, you are not alone. And today, where are you listening to this story from? Subscribe to the channel to be notified of the newest stories. I'll see you again in the next one.